Right. Joining us morning, the first of our morning broadcasts of presentations here at the Tucson Mineral Gallery. We have got Robert Ward on deck. He is start doing this fantastic presentation, cool presentation. All right, that is happening in just under 5 minutes. Later today, we're going to have Violetta Wolf from the Marville Museum joining us for the two. She's going to be talking about the Arthur Rowe collection. So thank you for tuning in, and just be patient. I'm going to leave the music going for you, and we're going to start with Robert in just 5 minutes. Much. All right, we are down to our final minute before airtime. So, okay, I'm getting the messages that the standby message was choppy on sound and fuzzy on picture. Barbara, thank you for letting us know. Let's see if we can pick this up a little bit. Nope, it looks like that's going to be it. I don't want to stop the stream and restart it, so we're going to go the best we can. We've been having problems with the restreaming of this, but rest assured that the part that's being recorded here at the Blue Cat Production Studio is looking good, high resolution. So when we reload it, then you'll see this in all its glory. So bear with us. You'll enjoy the show. And this is Robert Ward. We are getting ready to go. So let me go ahead and give Stu the thumbs up. There they are, ready to go. Stu, we're good to go.
I thought the hecklers were supposed to be up front and all the way in the back. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Stu Niebert, and I am the gallery manager here at the Tucson Fine Mineral Gallery. This morning, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Robert Shaw and his wife, Dr. Anne-Marie Ward. Correct? Yep, good. Making sure we're correct there. And his talk this morning on hunting meteorites. Without any further ado, Robert Ward.
Thank you all for coming. Pleasure to be here in this beautiful gallery. So, all for the love of meteorites. A lot of meteorite folks in this room, and you know, we travel all over the world in search of meteorites, getting samples for science, getting some collectors. And as you've probably, you know, a lot of the people here is getting into have seen a lot of it's here in Tucson. You have minerals, fossils, and meteorites are kind of one of the up and coming newer things that are available here at the show. So we've had a lot of adventures on every continent except Antarctica, recovering meteorites around the world. We've had some pretty interesting experiences in working in the Middle East over the years, in South America, and needless to say, the world can be a dangerous place. So meteorites essentially, we'll start out, I guess, with essentially what meteorites are. Yeah, and kind of an intro to show some of our adventures.
Every day, they invade our skies, big ones and small. They contain the very building blocks of life on our planet, yet they could wipe us out. And when they strike, I hunt them down. Camping and outdoor equipment, you never know what you're going to need. I have to get there fast, get there first. They're getting bigger and bigger. And get out before the shit hits the fan. We're being extorted by the police and we're getting the hell out of here. I travel the globe at a moment's notice. I'm here at the Peruvian impact crater. It's difficult. It's dangerous.
Robert's got a signal at Southern Palisades.
But I love it. Wow. And the rewards are incredible. I know meteorites. I know danger. And I know how to have a good time. I'm Robert Ward, and I travel the world in search of the fallen sky.
So, there's many different types of meteorites, which is one of the complications when we're hunting for meteorites, and I'm sure as Wolf can attest, and other dealers in the room, we always have a myriad of people bringing rocks to us that they think that this is a meteorite or something that fell on their grandpa's farm and whatnot, and 99.8% of the time it's just a common terrestrial earth rock. So identifying meteorites is one of the first steps to becoming a collector or a hunter. And we have a lot of tools online with all the resources with the internet today. It's one of the first steps is you want to learn how to identify features of a meteorite: thumbprints, fusion crust, if a magnet sticks to it, the basics. And then you work into more complicated things when you start getting to moon rocks, Mars rocks, things that have a high level of differentiation that are closer to an earth rock. So there's many levels to meteorite hunting and collecting. So we'll just kind of go through some of the basics of the different types of meteorites that are found on Earth and how you hunt for them. So like here we have an iron meteorite that I dug up in Monalista, Sweden. The largest one from this location that I dug up was 220 kilos, about 550 pounds, and it was over 1 meter deep. So by the time we got the hole dug, my colleagues were actually grabbing my fists and pulling me out of the hole. It was like a 2-day adventure, and then we finally had to get a tractor in there and pull it out of the hole. So this was a much smaller one that I found with a detector at the depth of about 4 feet in a kind of sandy soil. Witness Falls, this was in Battle Mountain, Utah. We had a big fireball that exploded and was witnessed for hundreds of miles all the way to Las Vegas, Arizona, all over California. Went up there and actually recovered some meteorites on this mountaintop that were just basically laying there. They have a fresh burnt black fusion crust. They're totally different than any other rocks in the surrounding area. So very easy to identify, but Witness Falls are actually one of kind of the bread and the butter for scientists. It gives us a look into something that was in space, sometimes literally days or hours ago. very fresh. You want to get to it before it's, it's contaminated with terrestrial contamination, such as rain or organics get to it. So witness falls are something that I always have 3 bags packed. I have jungle, desert, extreme cold winter, and depending on what happens, you grab the bag and you go, because early bird gets the worm. So it's very important to get there fast, get there as quick as you can, recover the samples, and get them to the laboratory and the wonderful scientists that do our fabulous research. The cold and dry deserts of the world provide lots of meteorites. This is in the Sultanate of Oman. It's my kind of benchmark signature piece, Dhofar 1433, also dubbed as the Apollo stone, because it's almost the exact shape of the Apollo capsule that returned our astronauts from the moon. Flight-oriented specimen. It has fluting that leads away from the nose of because it came in a stable fashion. Many meteorites just tumble, most tumble in all directions. This one came in and stabilized and just has this textbook, what we call oriented shape. One of the most beautiful and recognizable oriented meteorites in the world, which was unbelievable fortuitous discovery in the Middle East. This is an important meteorite called Glorieta Mountain, New Mexico. Happens to be my favorite place to hunt meteorites anywhere on the planet, and it's a palisite. It contains 92% iron, 6% nickel, and it contains olivine crystals. They look like emeralds inside the nickel-iron matrix. So when it's cut, I have a palisite that was recently found in China here, and it'll have these beautiful green olivine crystals behind it. If we want to pass that around, everybody can take a look at a palisite, and we'll have a witness fall stone recovered in. You want to handle that one around. So this is actually a witness fall. This was in space just a number of weeks ago. Very similar to this stone I recovered in Battle Mountain, Nevada. This is a witness fall I recovered in Indiana just weeks ago. And outside in the display case, you'll see the 116-pound main mass of the Indiana fall. It's provisionally named Ammo. Hopefully that name changes. Those are 2 examples of meteorites that you'll see. I don't think we have an iron. We could bring them under Villian, but anyways, two of the 3 main types of meteorites there. So identifying meteorites by the basic types is kind of the first step of becoming a meteorite collector or hunter. You want to identify these types. Now, the iron meteorites and the palladites, oftentimes we use a detector. You can see a pulse induction detector that I have here that we use in Sweden. We actually use very large coils. I developed a coil system. When I first started going to Sweden, there was teams from South America and Europe, Russian teams and German teams that were working over there, and it was a 3-man operation. They had this giant coil that was about as big as this open area here, and there was a guy on each end, and then there was a third guy with a control box and a shovel several meters behind him walking out of detection range. They didn't want it to interfere, and so they had this 3-man operation. Well, there was me, 2 other Americans, 1 American left, so it was down to me and then another team, I think it was a German team that was with us. And when the other Americans left, I hadn't found a big one yet, so I stayed. I had to get the engineering side of my mind going to figure out how am I going to do this single-handedly. So I actually developed a system using a PVC pipe and developed a coil with straps, and I had a riser on my backpack and had the coil way up above my head. Developed a technique to find meteorites individually, working by myself with this giant pulse induction detector. Right after I found this one, and I ended up finding a 300-pound meteorite on an expedition using that system. But the Uruguayan said, "You're crazy. You're going to die in the swamp, Gringo, because you can't do that." So a lot of times you have to develop new techniques on the fly, depending on the terrain and what environment you're working in. And that was certainly one of those instances. So the palisite Glorieta Mountain, New Mexico is found using a detector. So a lot of times we have to keep up with state-of-the-art trends. Nowadays we use drones to find meteorites, and then of course new off-road capabilities, and many pieces of equipment at our disposal. Google Earth's certainly been a game changer. The internet in general, our ability to know about fireball events and recoveries around the planet has been hugely beneficial for science. And, we're learning more from the scientists that are, working on Mars and Phobos and different planetary bodies. We're learning more about the parent bodies that meteorites come from, and able to identify things that before we wouldn't even recognize as a meteorite. So science has certainly contributed to our abilities in the field as well, identifying meteorites. So where meteorite adventures have taken us. So I've recovered meteorites on every continent except Antarctica. Antarctica is the scientist's playground. Dolores, have you been on an ANSMET expedition? So anybody in the room, Rick? No? So? No, I purely. That's true. So we have two of the most famous scientists in the meteorite planetary science world sitting right here in the room, Rick and Dolores Hill. And so many of the scientists have been on the ANSMET expeditions, which is the American Search for Meteorites in Antarctica, and that's the scientist playground, so I stay out of that one. But everywhere else on the planet, if there's been some extraordinary meteorite event, I've been there. We've had meteorite adventures. My wife and I's first expedition was to a meteorite fall in Takourt, Morocco, up by the Algerian border, and we'd been dating, a few weeks at that point, and just like I said, there's this rare meteorite from asteroid Vesta that just fell on the other side of the Atlas Mountains. Do you want to go? And she's like, well, yep, sure, I guess. So we were on a plane the next day and off to meet a colleague, and the next day, I think we were driving across a riverbed, and we pop up, and we're going across this limestone plain, and I had, binoculars, and we're looking for these shiny black eucrites from the asteroid Vesta, and you could see them at a distance. We're traveling at a pretty good pace, and I'd stop every little bit and glass the area, and I kept seeing these boulders up ahead. And we get up, and I'm looking at them with a binocular, and I go, yeah, that's real funny. They're painted red. I'm like, who would come out here and paint these giant boulders red? And then we got up a little bit further, kind of at an angle. I'm looking at the ones off in the distance, and they're white on the other side, and it suddenly clicked. I've seen this before. We're in a mine. Those are DeMarca minefield, and the red side that we're on is where the mines are. So after the shock calmed down and we quit panicking, I said, okay, well, you just look out the window, don't get out, and for something that looks like a hubcap and two little antennae sticking out of the ground, and tell me not to run that over. We backed up very carefully and our tracks and drove back into the riverbed and got out the other side. But thank goodness I didn't blow my future wife up. So things like that happen. I almost ran over a mine in the Sultanate of Oman when I was actually, this is the Takourt expedition. This is the one where we drove into the minefield. And we're having tea here with some, those are the Berbers. And then nearby there were some palm trees, trying to buy. They're out there hunting meteorites, and a lot of competition at that one. There was hundreds of Berbers and Bedouins. So after we finished having tea with those folks, and we drove over to the Bedouin palm trees, and there was a similar group. We had a similar get together with folks, and so it's just interesting, these two cultures both hunting for the same rock, and everybody's getting along even though they have their own trees. So you have a lot of outstanding, cultural interactions, meteorite hunting, and you have to learn how to adapt to, the cultures in these sort of situations. Anne had several days of travel to get there, and she wasn't feeling real great when her friend Adam picked us up from the airport. As we were leaving the airport, Adam got her some digestive biscuits to kind of settle her stomach and everything. And what about 15 clicks down the highway, we got pulled over, and she got a ticket because it was during Ramadan and she was eating in the car. That was her first international cultural experience. So, and then we actually spent a month. Jack and Kelly, our newest meteorite finders, they both found their first meteorites this summer, and both of them were museum pieces, amazingly. In one location, we found about 200 meteorites of various sizes, most of them small, some very large. We found 5 collection pieces, and 2 of them was the kids' first find. So mathematical odds of having found 200 meteorites, and 2 of those were their first finds, was just astonishing. But very proud of them for that. And recently I was cleaning one that Ann found. She was kind of disappointed that she didn't find some spectacular shaped, incredible collection piece. And I popped a rock out of the side of an iron from the same location, and it had a giant hole through the middle of it. So all the meteorite collectors in the room know you have an iron with a hole through it. It's aesthetically pleasing and therefore very important. So all four of us ended up finding a major collection piece at that one location. So we also spent a number of time at a fall in Cuba as a family. That was the kids' first international expedition. There was a large meteorite fall on Cuba, which is, a rather large island. And we spent a month there and found a number of pieces. So it was a big fall. We were able to get samples to Chicago Field Museum and different institutions and research done on them. And it was really interesting to see the culture of Cuba and like this backwoods part that people don't see, and it was like stepping back, 100 years. I mean, we would ride to town on a buckboard, basically a wagon with no wheels, pulled by a mule. It's just really interesting. Great experience for the kids, being their first out of the country experience. But it's just seeing the lack of supplies and whatnot. It was kind of a challenging thing because you had to bring everything into the field with you. So a lot of times you have that kind of situation to where you're working in an area that's basically a third world situation, and you're not able to function unless you bring everything in. So, and a lot of times you can kind of get in a bind, with supplies in different parts of Africa and whatnot. So it's important to, know the environment you're going into politically, bring the supplies with you that you need. So there's a lot of logistics involved in meteorite hunting. We had a fall in Botswana that Ann and I went on. It was, I think, Rick, you might have been involved with the asteroid. I think it was the third near-Earth asteroid that was spotted before it hit the atmosphere. And I was working with a colleague at NASA, and we had lightning mapping images of the explosion in the upper atmosphere. And Ann and I went there and spent several weeks trying to recover this meteorite. It ended up being from the asteroid Vesta. But it just so happened to fall in the Kalahari Black Mane Lion District. So it's basically a research site, and there's just lions everywhere. The first night we had 2 toms circling our camp. We had our tent up on top of the truck, and I used to guide in Africa, so I just rented this overland rig with the tent up on top. They didn't have any guides at the time. I said, well, I used to guide in Africa, just give me a rig. So we were basically on our own, 300 kilometers from the nearest town, and in this research area. Had 2 toms circling the tent, and row, 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 hollering to each other all night long. I don't think Ann got any sleep that night. And next morning we got up and got out hunting, and of course we're staying fairly close to the road. I told her we can't get more than 100 meters from the road, because if we see a pride of lions coming, we're going to have to get back to the vehicle immediately. And I hear her scream, and she's running back to the car, and she's, snake, 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 and she's describing it was green, and it was about this long, and I'm like, oh, that was a black mamba. And I grew up in southern Africa as a kid, spent my summers over there, so I knew, but I was like, I can't tell her that. She'll never get her out in the car again. So I'm like, honey, there's all kinds of snakes, don't worry about it. So she gets back in the Land Cruiser, and she's reading through the book, and she pulls this book out. I'm like, what is that book? And she goes, it's a book on poisonous snakes in southern Africa. I'm like, where'd you find that? It was under the seat. That was a black mamba! So the next morning, we finally got back to hunting again, and we've been baby hunting an hour, and all of a sudden I hear this lion like, growl, like this, just shakes the air, growl, and I thought it was right next to me, so I just kind of lowered down, and I'm looking on the base of trees, and I see these 2 little legs running by, and I hear the radio chirp, lion, and it killed Greisbach or whatever, and so I'm like, just get back to the car and start honking the horn. So, because I didn't know where the lion was. So she gets back to the car and she's honking the horn, and I get back over there, and she was on one side of the road and I was on the other, and she jumped the Greisbach, this little Cape Red Greisbach, and it ran about 20, 30 meters, and the lion just took the Greisbach out right in front of her. So it got real. So that was kind of the end of that expedition. We hunted roads for about 3 or 4 more days, and we didn't find it. A research expedition later did find it, and it turned out to be a Eucrite from the asteroid Vesta. So a lot of very interesting situations like that pop up. You never know what you're getting into. Like, one thing I'll often tell reporters when we're doing news stories and whatever is, they ask about how do you know where you're going to go or how do you prepare? And it's like, well, spin the globe and close your eyes, spin the globe, put your finger down. If there isn't water there, it might be there in 48 hours. So it's like totally random where meteorites fall. Obviously, a good part of planet Earth is covered by oceans, and you're not going to find one in the water. So if it lands on land, if it's, obviously it's North Korea, we're not going to find it. But if it's, in a situation where it's politically stable enough and, safe enough in regards to the, the environment that you're working in, then we'll certainly give it a shot. What do we have here? Going back to here, the Oman situation, should I run through that on this? So probably the most dangerous expedition I'd been on was in the Sultanate of Oman. This was one of my most important recoveries that I've ever made. It was the 40th lunar meteorite ever discovered on planet Earth. And it was lunar breccia that I found in 2006. And worked over there for about 6 years on our 10th expedition. The person I was working with at the time and I were heading out of the desert after a very successful 3 or 4 weeks in the desert, and we saw a military patrol coming towards us, and they stopped us and got out and surrounded us in M16s and demanded my passport. I handed them the passport, and they got me out of the car and ended up taking us to a police station and inquiring what we're doing there. I said, well, we're hunting for these rocks, and they didn't buy it. So next thing you know, we were taken into custody and transported across several villages throughout the night. We ended up we found out later we'd been transported to the city of Muscat, the capital of the Sultanate of Oman. And at that point, spent 1 month in Kurum Interrogation Center, an 8x8 hole in the ground, essentially, concrete floor, and was fed rat bone soup. It's looked like white gravy and little double jointed bones in it. And pretty much lived like that for about a month. And so they'd come in and take me to an interrogation center. I never saw the other person for a month. So the last time I saw him, we were taken to the prosecuting attorney's office when they asked, what were you doing? And I described what I was doing, and they said, well, you work for the government, you're a spy. I go, no, I'm not a spy. And he goes, you're a mobster. I go, mobster? I mean, you guys been watching Hollywood movies like mobster? And they couldn't understand why we were there picking up these rocks. In those cultures, people have things. They don't collect things. People don't have the freedoms that we do to go out and collect cars or stamps or gold and meteorites, dinosaurs, whatever. Those things belong to the government, and it's not really a thing where they're able to have what they want, essentially. So it's kind of foreign concept what we're telling them. So about a week went by, and I had told time and time again I want to speak to the U.S. Embassy, not let me speak to anybody, and my family thinks I'm dead in the desert. You have to let me talk to the embassy, and I'm going to catch on. I'm not going to get a chance to. So that's when things kind of got real after a number of days. And one day they came in and they said, come. And they took me down to an interrogation room that was pretty much just a concrete room, about twice as long as this one. And there was bloody handprints all over the walls and big puddles of blood. And there was a big steel table bolted to the floor in the middle of the room and a steel chair. And they sat me down, and I sat in there for about an hour, and this guy came in and sat down, and it was an Omani guy, and this guy was huge. He was like ripped, and you just don't see, like, they don't work out in the Middle East. Like, it's not a cultural thing in a country like Oman. And this guy was huge, like bodybuilder. He sat down and he just stared at me for about 15, 20 minutes, and finally he goes, are you scared? And I said, yeah, I'm scared. And he goes, why are you scared? And I said, because you people won't let me call the embassy. I don't know what I'm doing here. My family thinks I'm dead in the desert. Yeah, I'm scared. He goes, of course you're scared. He goes, maybe we'll put you in prison. He goes, maybe we'll kill you. He goes, so you're going to tell me the truth now? And he hit the table, and so I said, okay, I told you I'm here on the rocks, and he's writing everything. And about 8 minutes in, 10 minutes in, he just hits the book and slams everything off the table. He said, "You've told me nothing but lies, and you'll go back to the cell until you're ready to tell the truth." So they took me back and threw me in the cell and shut the door, and I just sat in there like in terror, like it hadn't really crossed my mind they'd kill me. So you had a lot of time to sit in there, just 24 hours of isolation. They'd open the door and kick some food in, and you didn't see anybody for day after day. And so I sat in there like all day long thinking like, they might kill me. So it got real at that point. You're just in terror, like your mind's kind of like looking at a TV channel that's not there, like black, white, and gray fuzz. Just you're absolute terror. You can't grab onto an emotion or a thought. It's just like this cascade of emotions and panic, and you're just laying there hyperventilating until you finally just nod off. And so about 24 hours went by, and they came and got me, and they said, "Okay, come." And they took me back to the room, and they sat me down in the chair, and waited about an hour expecting to see my weightlifter buddy come in, and this little old Omani guy walks in, and he's in traditional Omani dress, and he sits down at the table, and introduces himself, and he goes, "We don't want to keep you here. This doesn't do any good to, hold you here. We want you to go home to your family. So tell me your story, and I will present it to the prosecuting attorney, and we'll try to help you home." And so, okay, great. So I go back to my cell after talking to him. I'm laying there, and I'm not in panic anymore. I'm like, he's going to try to help me go home, and this is great. So this howling starts, like, howl, and I thought, well, maybe one of the German Shepherd police dogs bit somebody, and they're beating the dog or whatever, because there was like this pipe going through the wall, and you could tell whatever they were beating was chained to this pipe, because you could hear them like clubbing or beating whatever this poor creature was, and the howls finally died down into cries, and it was like, hoo, 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 hoo. And then I realized it wasn't a dog, it was a human. And the beatings continued until there wasn't any more noise, and then you could hear the chain get unwrapped around the pipe, and at that moment I realized it was a human, and they had just probably beat that person to death. And then I just went right back into sheer terror, right? Just hyperventilating, and because I'm thinking it's my partner and I'm next, and so anyways, long story short, that was their version of good cop, bad cop. So we remained there for about another month. The U.S. Embassy found us about 2 weeks after that. About a month in, the U.S. Embassy found us, and they began making plans to get us out one way or another. They were working with the Omani government to secure our release, and it happened to be during the Arab Spring, so we didn't know it, but they were burning police stations down. The Sultan of Oman fled to his private island because the people were revolting. So it was during a very trying time. The Arab Spring had spread through Egypt and all over the Middle East, and was a very big deal, but we knew none of this. It happened started about a week after we were captured. So finally, the U.S. Embassy was able to get us moved to a more secure facility, and we didn't understand why we needed to be moved to a more security facility, but it made sense later, after our release, when we found out the situation in the world at the time. So in all, we spent 2 months in custody before the U.S. Embassy was able to get us released, in the middle of a civil war, essentially. So that's one of the more hair-raising situations, but meteorites have their risks, and if you're going to do it, sooner or later things happen. I was bitten by a tick in California hunting for the Sutter's Mill meteorite, which is one of the oldest things known to man, very important meteorite to science, and one of my crowning achievements on the scientific end. Got bit on the shoulder by a tick, didn't think it was any big deal. And actually, I was with Dolores Hill doing an NPR interview at the Phoenix building at University of Arizona. And that was during the beginnings of the OSIRIS-REx thing. I think you guys were testing the lander, no, that was the Mars mission. We were testing the Mars, and we were looking at all that. And right in the middle of the interview, my throat swelled shut, and I was like, I just can't keep going on. And I'm drinking water, and I'm like, I just couldn't talk. So I went home, back to Prescott, crawled into bed, and the next morning I woke up, and I just kind of I started to get up, and I fell on the floor, and I looked at the clock. I'd gone to bed about 7 o'clock, and it was 11 o'clock. and I was just pouring sweat and couldn't move. And so I called a friend, and he helped me get to the hospital. Turns out I had contracted Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The CDC later contacted me, and they said, wanted to confirm this happened in California. I told them, yeah, it was Tuolumne County. And they said, well, you're the first case of Rocky Mountain spotted fever in 88 years in California. I was patient 0. They ironically had 88 cases that season, and now it's run amok for a number of years now in California. So the scientists were all joking, you found all the rare stuff on that expedition. So found the first meteorite, the smallest meteorite, and I had the largest meteorite, Sutter's Mill, for a while. I had the trio, and a local found a larger piece later. It's since been cut up, so I now have once again have the largest sample. Worth it, indeed, but that's the closest I've ever come to actually dying, because my brain swelled up to the point where my skull couldn't contain it, and luckily they got antibiotics in me. But sometimes it's the smallest thing that almost kills you. I mean, you don't think about a little tick killing you. It's more likely the guys at the M16s were going to, but we've had a number of instances like that. Almost got abducted by the FARC in Colombia, had a gun put to my head, and they told me to get out of the car. My driver just punched it. We got around the corner, and he told me later, he said, it's better that we take the chance, maybe you get shot, because if they take you into the jungle, you'll never be seen again. So those are some of our more prominent misadventures. So why do meteorites matter? Well, they're beautiful, and a lot of the rock collectors in the room, they love the aesthetics of it. And meteorite collecting is just an absolute amazing thing. It's like you're able to actually hold part of another world in your hand. So, and it's something that's, it's something to where citizen scientists and, the people in this room are able to actually make a difference in science and outreach. And like Wolf over here, they take the time. Just yesterday, him and I were talking to this little girl, and she aspires now to be a planetary scientist, and maybe she'll be. They live here in Tucson. I told him, well, you got to meet Dolores Hill, and she's taught some of the greatest scientists of our times, and so it's something where we can actually teach young people about science, and that they can actually make a difference, especially with us coming into this age of space exploration, where SpaceX is once again, America is able to launch our own astronauts and our own vehicles to the space station and beyond. We're looking at the moon. A lot of technological advances to where I think our children and the children after them are actually going to be the pioneers that go beyond the moon and take those first steps out into space. And we're at this point in innovation to where we actually have the technical ability to do so. OSIRIS-REx mission, something that Ann and I have been very proud to be involved in our own little way, and Rick and Dolores Hill are absolute, have made essential contributions to that program. Dolores is like the person here in Tucson with the OSIRIS-REx mission. So we've been an honor to be ambassadors with that program, and to watch the launch at Cape Canaveral, to see the spacecraft actually land on the asteroid Bennu, get samples of a carbonaceous asteroid. And I was actually at the Dugway Proving Ground when the capsule returned to Earth. That's been a year ago or something. And see the chutes deploy, and to go full circle from leaving in Florida and landing in the Utah desert. It was just amazing. We just live in an absolutely amazing age. And I think working in meteorites and being a part of this world, it enlightens people. And it's a way to actually touch a piece of another world and to be involved in real science. So not something that is available to us in all sciences, but it certainly is in meteorites. And every citizen scientist, everybody out there, anybody that reports a fireball, everybody can contribute to planetary sciences. So I think it's an amazing aspect of what we do. So OSIRIS-REx is giving us a look inside an asteroid that's filled with raw materials. There's organics, there's water. You have a lot of potential on carbonaceous asteroids. They are basically the building blocks of life. A lot of the key elements for, basically what we're made of is stardust, and that's found inside this type of meteorite, these group of asteroids. So just a remarkable mission, and very proudly based here in Arizona. So Arizona's cutting edge of space science, and also basically we're the meteorite mecca of the world. I'm very proud of that too. We got University of Arizona, ASU, a lot of great scientists and a lot of great research here in Arizona. So it's amazing to be right in the center of that. As a lot of you know, we're returning to the moon soon with the the new moon missions that are slated. What year is that, Rick, Dolores, that we're supposed to schedule to target? Huh? To be huh? Yeah. So we hopefully, in the coming years, we'll be going back to the moon, and hopefully we beat the Chinese, because right now the new space race is for a isotope called helium-3. And I think, in my opinion, this is the key to energy in the future. So instead of creating nuclear energy the traditional way, we can actually combine isotopes and create clean nuclear power. You can essentially have a nuclear reactor in your car or even your wristwatch, and the only byproduct is steam. It's a clean nuclear energy, and on the moon, 1 square acre of lunar regolith has enough helium-3 to power New York City for a year. So you're talking about near limitless clean energy on the moon. And I don't know why it's not commonly known, but the Chinese certainly know about it. They're actually technically ahead of us, I think, in harvesting helium-3. I know my moon rock you saw earlier, DOFAR 1428, samples of that were not donated by me, but donated by another meteorite person to the CCP, and they actually used my moon rock to create one of a number of bays of simulated lunar regolith. And this was back in 2009 or 10, I believe. And there were several different bays of different types of lunar regolith, and they have these regolith harvesters that actually go through and harvest helium-3 out of these upper few inches of the moon surface. So they were working on that back then, long before us. So hopefully we catch up very soon, because this could essentially make oil obsolete. Makes a great lubricant, but as far as an energy source, we would no longer need it if we're able to harvest helium-3 in large enough numbers. And that's the first step to one of many. I mean, we have to find water. I think we've made some great progress in finding water on the moon lately. And the moon is basically our stepping stone out into the stars. Colonizing space, that's obviously the big picture, is making it to Mars. Elon's made it very clear that he's building these starships to get back to Mars. And, of course, the last one didn't go too well. I think I got back the day before the day before I got to Tucson. I was in Turks Caicos recovering debris from the starship that exploded in orbit when it had a fuel leak. And we're finding these starship heat tiles shaped like a stop sign, ultra lightweight, and literally there as they're washing up on the beaches. Just amazing experience. But it's amazing to see the technology they're using to get back to Mars. It's astonishing the leaps and bounds we've made recently, but that's the first step to colonizing space. Meteorites are an important aspect of that, because in order to build stepping stones to get to Mars or to get to the other rocky bodies in the solar system that we could potentially inhabit, because we're running out of resources on this planet. I mean, if people keep reproducing at the rates that we have been, we're going to have to inhabit other bodies. It's just simple mathematics. At some point, we are going to have to take those steps, or we're going to have a real problem as a species collectively. So, meteorites, raw materials. I like to say that meteorites are the assayer's guide to the solar system. So basically, in our meteorite collections, we have a broad cross-section of the Apollo group asteroids. Bennu, we have obviously the freshest samples, and the Chinese mission to, the Japanese, Hababusu, that was to which one? Yeah, to Ryugu. So that's another important one. The meteorites, and obviously we have limited capabilities to go to all these rocky bodies in the solar system, but they're coming to us. So By collecting meteorites from freshly fallen, from fresh falls, we're actually able to see this fresh sample of a parent body that would have taken billions of dollars to get to and do a sample return. So basically, it's the poor man's space probe and the assayer's guide to the solar system. So in our meteorite collections, we have tens of thousands of samples from all over the solar system. We have Apollo asteroids, carbonaceous, things from out in the Kuiper Belt, Moon, Mars, Phobos, possibly. Certainly the asteroid Vesta, widely sampled, one of the largest parent bodies, might be a great stopping off point. So it's an assayer's guide to the solar system. I don't know who, but there was a planetary scientist that once said that the science of meteoritics is like trying to learn about eggs by studying a cake. Everything's been mixed up, everything's been differentiated. The core mantle process of a planetary body, basically all the heavy elements sink to the center. You have your iron cores, and the lighter materials go to the outside, and you have your stony crusts, essentially. So this differentiation has changed a lot of meteorites, but a lot of the older meteorites, they were ejected from their parent body very early in the formation of the planets and the bodies in our solar system. So it's kind of like a time capsule as well. It gives us a look to what was happening on Mars, like Black Beauty, very famous Martian meteorite. It gives us a look at what was happening during the Draconian period on Mars when there was oceans of water. We can do all the sample return missions we want to Mars, but we very well may not find a pristine stone from that period of Mars evolution as a planetary body. But we have pristine samples because of the meteorites that we've recovered here on Earth. So very important aspect of meteorite recovery and what we do. Oop. Let's do that one. Okay. And this was something that was one of the greatest honors of my career, and these two folks right here, near and dear to my heart, were responsible for this. But it was an honor to have a minor planet named after me. So this is 45509 Robert Ward. So when things get rough here, I'm just going to pack up and move. So it was just an amazing experience. I was actually hunting a meteorite fall that broke up pretty much right over our house, and a dear friend of mine that's now passed away, Dave Giesling, a lot of you here knew him, Brian and I's best friend, was with me, and we were talking to a NASA scientist. It exploded over her house, 20 miles down the flight path, and Rick had messaged me and said, hey, you might want to check Facebook. And I'm like, oh no, I got hacked. I said, dude, I got to take care of this. He's like, what happened? And then all of a sudden he's like, what's wrong? And I said, well, I just handed him the phone, and he was just like elated. So she actually went and got a bottle of champagne. And just what are the chances that I get the news hunting for a fireball 20 miles from my house, and it happens to be a scientist that worked on one of the probes, one of the planetary probes, that understood the significance of what had just occurred. It was just one of those magical moments you'll never forget, and we'll never forget that honor. So, but yeah, this is the actual orbit of Robert Ward. You can see it goes close to Mars, and it's no threat to Earth. I don't want to be responsible for that one. Yeah. What did I hit here? There we go. Okay, meteorite types. As a lot of you probably saw coming in, there's a recent fireball over Arizona, right? We actually recovered two meteorite falls in Arizona recently, Quartzite, La Posa Plain, I think it was named. We recovered a number of stones. My team recovered a number of stones from that one. While working on that one, I was working on a fall in South Africa, and one of my team members went out and he had the information of this other fireball, and I'd hunted for it many times, nobody had found it, and he went out while I was out of the country and discovered an odd-looking rock that later turned out to be a Martian meteorite. And very fresh. You can see is kind of even a indentation around this stone, which I later found when he took me out there, and it's an 801 gram mass of a gabbroic shergotite that fell here in Arizona. So absolutely remarkable discovery. I had two career goals left at the beginning of the 2024 was to actually witness a fireball and to recover stone from it, and to find the elusive Martian meteorite. I'd found four different lunars around the planet and had yet to find a Martian meteorite. So I was shocked to find one just a few hundred miles from my house in my very own backyard. So this is the 801 gram mass of the Stardust Mine meteorite, which is where I was camped before the meteorite was even found. And that stone's actually on display here in the display case to the left when you go out. So there are 10 stones recovered, all 10 of them are on display there. It's probably the first time ever something so remarkable where the entire strewn field's been preserved, all the data has been recorded, and it's something that's just absolutely extraordinary. And the most beautiful Martian meteorite I've ever seen. So was just shocked that the first Martian I found was like literally the most beautiful one. So still in awe at that discovery. So this was one of our three big discoveries this year. The other one was the stone. I think we're passing around we still have that one. That's the stone from Indiana that I think a lot of you got to look at earlier. Different types of meteorites. So your most common meteorite is chondrites. Chondrites are basically stony meteorites from the Apollo asteroid group or a number of other parent bodies. They contain the building blocks of the solar system and the planets. So early in our solar system's formation, everything starts out as kind of a star nursery, a nebula, and the gases condense down, and the nuclear fusion process starts, matter collapses on itself, and you end up with a star igniting. And when the fusion process sends out the shock waves that propagate against the localized area of the solar nebula, it shocks the dust particles and the solid matter in that region of space into chondrules. So basically the shock wave creates these tiny little spheres of glass and silicates with metal. Oftentimes they have metal rims, and so whatever's floating out there gets shocked into these solid little spherules called chondrules, which are one of the basic building blocks of most of the asteroids out in our solar system. The chondrules became embedded in the matrix of common chondrites, which are the most common. So it's actually one of the things you use to identify the most common meteorites when you're out looking for meteorites in the desert or whatever. If you see these tiny little spherules, it's very likely a meteorite. It's not a shape you're going to see very commonly in terrestrial Earth rocks. So chondrites are the most common type of meteorite. So then you have your stony iron pallasites. The one in the slice in the box is the palisite. One of the most recognizable meteorites, one of the most beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, and therefore one of the most prized, expensive to collectors and dealers. So pallasites are just, they're the most sparkly. So when you hold them up, you'll actually see the crystals inside them. It's olivine or sometimes pyroxene crystals inside them, gemmy. They're even faceted into gemstones and such. Just like the most beautiful of all meteorites, most people would consider the stony iron pallasites. Basically, I think the traditional approach to looking at how the pallasites were formed is the core mantle boundary of a large planetary body. So once again, going back to the differentiation process, you have all your heavy metals, your iron, your nickel, cobalt, and everything go to the center of a parent planet body or in its formation when it's still basically a molten ball. Everything's kind of going to the center. Your rocky silicates go to the outside. Well, kind of at the middle of where this process takes place is where your pallasites form, and your stony irons like mesositerites and whatnot. So as the planetary body slowly cools, your nickel iron core is crystallizing and obtaining the very striking and one-of-a-kind pattern we call the Widmanstätten pattern. And then just outside that, you have the silicates crystallizing into olivine or pyroxene crystals inside this nickel iron matrix. So when the body cools down and eventually these minor planets were destroyed by gravitational forces. Maybe it's got a little too close to its parent body, or it slammed into it, like what happened to the early proto-Earth. It was struck by a body referred to as Theia, and a bunch of the material was ejected out, and for millions of years, Earth actually had rings. And then a bunch of that material formed our moon. That's, I think, the most popular model that we see today, is that much of the moon is actually the early remnants of early proto-Earth and Theia. And we have several different oxygen isotope values that confirm, that theory. And then everything fell back in the proto-Earth and created the Earth we know today. Well, a lot of that material that was ejected might have had chondrules, and it could have been the leftovers from the earlier evolution of the planet and of the moon. But so the pallosites basically are the core mantle boundary between the layer where the chondrules are and the iron meteorites that are easily distinguishable. So the Martian and lunar meteorites, two of the most valuable, well, at least they used to be. The moon rocks have become pretty common and cheaper than a lot of the other meteorites these days. So, but at one time, the lunars were extremely rare. I found the 40th and 41st moon rock ever discovered on Earth in consecutive expeditions. And that was now, how many, well, would you say thousands? How many hundreds or thousands of moon rocks do we have in or Dolores, do you know the number of these? Many hundreds, like we can't even keep track of so many. And I think a lot of that's education. We've, there's just as many in North America as there is in Northwest Africa, Northeast Africa, where they're finding all the lunars. A big part of it is every camel herder, every goat herder, everybody out there knows these things are valuable. So you've got thousands of meteorite hunters. We're here. Occasionally a farmer might find one, but here everything in farming has become automated. The rock pickers even are automated. There's not a guy out there picking them up and throwing them out of the field like in the 1920s or late 1800s when farm fields are being cleared in North America, and they found a lot of meteorites that way. Harvey Nininger, the father of meteoritics, found a lot of long fence posts and fence rows, and farmers would know that this is odd and would keep it. But moon rocks and Mars rocks are very similar to Earth rocks. You find a lot, especially here in Arizona, you find a lot of what look like breccias or gabbros, and it's very hard to differentiate. We have yet to find a North American lunar meteorite. My team has been working adamantly trying to get that one under our belts. We found a Martian instead. Bummer. But that was actually what his whole mission was, to find that moon, and we found the Mars instead. So we're going to knock that lunar out this year, I think. So, but it's very hard to find a rock that's looks identical to the other rocks in the area. So moon and Mars rocks, very hard to identify, especially in the American Southwest, because just so many things that look like them. This one was a slam dunk, right? That was probably in space a year ago. So it's very easy to identify when they're freshly fallen, but after they're weathered, very hard to identify. But so essentially, you have stones, you have stony irons, you have irons, and then you have your achondrites. So going back to the differentiation process, your iron core, you have your pallosite, your stony irons, mesositerites, whatnot, and then you have your the chondritic portion, and then the very, very outside of a planetary body, it's heavily differentiated, is where your achondrites are going to be. Of course, Moon and Mars is very large planetary bodies, so you have a very thick layer of what we consider achondritic material. But like Vesta, a lot of the larger planets in the solar system, their very outer edge was achondritic material. So as it was, those bodies were destroyed, their iron cores, their stony iron materials, they're still in orbit around the sun. And every once in a while, one of those end up on an Earth-crossing orbit and crash into us. But the achondrites, very rare. But we learn a lot about them. Learn a lot about those early planetary bodies from those samples. So, becoming a collector. So collecting meteorites when I was 13 years old, saw a big fireball from parents' driveway in Bullhead City. So Laughlin, Nevada, sort of Arizona, California, and Nevada touch, the tri-state area. Saw a big fireball come down, saw this cherry red object come out of the fireball and slowly falling over the California sunset, and you could like see highs and lows, like slowly cool, the fusion crust cooling on it. So I was already a rock hound. My grandparents were into lapidary, and my parents were into artifacting, and I grew up kind of in that world, learning how to cut rocks and polish and everything. And so rocks were already a fascination to me. Wanted to be an astronaut, as every boy does, and that was the spark. I knew something had come out of that fireball and hit the ground. So the next day I ran to the library and checked out every book I could find on meteorites. There wasn't much material back then, but there was one book, Harvey Nininger's Find a Falling Star. A lot of you may have met Harvey Nininger's grandson at just revised Find a Falling Star lately. So I had the pleasure of meeting him right out here and talked about his grandfather's adventures and whatnot. But that was a spark for me, and that's why I think it's important to do outreach and to inspire young people to grab a hold of a passion, especially in planetary sciences, as we take these first steps out amongst the stars. But that was it for me. That was the spark that started it out. So now we curate the world's largest private collection of major museum pieces, and we have the largest of many of the more important classifications and types of meteorites, and it's important to curate them for future generations. A lot of you, in the meteorite world know about the disaster that happened in Brazil when their museum was tragically destroyed, and a lot of course, their big irons made it, but a lot of the rare specimens were unfortunately lost as the multi-story museum crashed down on their collections. I felt terrible for my colleagues over there, Maria and everything, but I think that was an eye-opener that diversification of our collections is very important. If you have everything, like in that case, there was a number of specimens that were only housed there, and they're lost forever. So diversifying across collections like University of Arizona, ASU, private collections such as my own, around the world, if there's natural disasters or events where these things would be lost, they're not totally lost. So trading with institutions is very important. You can't walk into a museum and buy a meteorite, or walk into a university and buy a meteorite, but you can bring something in that just came from outer space, something that's important for the research, give it to them. They give me something that I don't have in my collection. Everybody benefits. So trading is a big part of the meteorite world, and I think it's a very important one. So if you want to start your own collection, start with the basics. Common chondrites, very cheap. There's a lot of great dealers here at the show, just across the highway over at Days Inn, and Aerolite caters to all levels, from beginners to museums, so as do myself. We have something for everybody. So if you want to start collecting meteorites, irons, your chondrites, great, a place to start, pallasites, and then you can work your way up to Moon and Mars. I mean, so many varieties. And meteorites don't have the pop of a giant fluoride or a tourmaline, but it's the factor that you're touching something from the very beginning of the solar system. A lot of these were created before Earth even existed. There's materials in there that actually stardust, calcium aluminum inclusions from a star that went supernova before the birth of our solar system. So it's really a chance to touch something that's older than our planet and the very building blocks of ourselves. So it's an amazing thing to be able to touch part of another world, and that goes into the anomalies. I mean, an advanced collector, every once in a while we find something totally new. I actually recently had finished up a classification, Dhofar, carbonaceous chondrite, that I found the same trip as I found my 40th moon, my first moon rock, which was the 40th. Found an interesting carbonaceous chondrite on that expedition, and I think there's 3 or 4 now. The others are Yamamoto, Antarctica, and they're going to be proposing the CD class. So mine would be the type sample from Dhofar, hence the D, so carbonaceous D. So very excited about that. Hopefully that comes to fruition soon. So if you want to get started in meteorites, you got a lot of the best people in the world right here in Tucson. So, you know, Aerolite and, you know, some of the best scientists on the planet are all based here. So you got lots of resources to ask questions and learn about meteorites and acquire samples that we're really in the, I think the golden age of meteorite collecting right now. And I think we've kind of reached the peak. And the hot deserts of the world are eventually going to be cleaned out. We saw the first rush in Morocco. Morocco was kind of the beginning of the great meteorite boom when Mars rocks were suddenly available and moon rocks were affordable, and then it all kind of came to an end. And it got to where it was very hard to acquire these things, and moon rocks were thousands of dollars a gram. Mars rocks were thousands of dollars a gram. Moon rocks were $1,000 a gram, and there was a number of years there we were like starving for material, and then they taught these other countries how to hunt and how to go out into these deserts when they're herding camels and rounding up their goats and find meteorites. And so there was a second boom that was how many times larger? Probably 40 times larger than Morocco. You got Mauritania, Libya, Mali, Niger, just all these countries. And this amazing flood that's benefit science. We found things that we never even imagined finding before. Black Beauty, a meteorite from Mars that was formed during the Draconian period when basically it was formed in a river channel on Mars. It has clay, it has liquid water from the planet Mars. It's basically like a sedimentary rock from Mars, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's the only, I think it's the only breccia from Mars, and we've actually identified the crater on Mars that it was ejected from. So it's the one meteorite that we can point to in our collections and point to somewhere in the solar system and say that meteorite came from exactly that spot. So it's duly interesting. Not only is it the most unique and scientifically valuable Martian, it's the one meteorite that we know exactly where it is, thanks to a group of researchers that crunched the numbers on all the Martian craters and identified the one crater it could come from. So we're in this golden age where these kind of things are possible, but I think we've reached the peak and we're on the downhill slope. At that point, major collections and you know, it's going to become rare. So I think they're a great investment. It's going to take you know, a long time for the market to absorb what's on there right now, a few years, and the Mars and Moon that are out there, and I think they're going to be something that's once again extraordinarily rare. So meteorites are, I think, it's a great investment in the long term, and it's just amazing to hold something in your hand that was once part of a planet that doesn't exist anymore. So any questions on meteorite hunting or collecting? We're happy to answer them. Go for it, Bill.
Okay, so you're looking for the first North American.
Yep.
So that's one of your goals.
Yeah.
I know you would like to have a sample of 509 award. You know, I'm not really sure. But what are you looking for? What do you get excited about when you're going out to a new fall?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you don't know what's going to show up with it. Are you hoping it's going to be an iron in this case, or a palestite, or you know, are you just accepting whatever you know?
Well, that's part of the absolute, yeah, part of the excitement of chasing fireballs is we don't know. So you have to you have to look at the broad cross section of everything that's available. You learn these patterns, you learn these shapes, you learn what meteorites are available because you don't know what's going to fall next. You know, you sometimes videos of fireball events or whatever, you can learn a little bit about the event or whatever, but we don't know. And that's a lot of the excitement. When I'm out there chasing a fireball, you might walk up on a palestite, you might walk up on a Mars rock, you might find the first lunar fall. It could be the first lunar fall and the first North American lunar. So you don't know, and that's the exciting part. It's absolutely up to nature what's going to fall, you know, and so it's exciting to make that first discovery. It's one of the most exciting elements of fireball chasing, is that you don't know what fell, and a lot of times it's really important to science to get it into the laboratory as quickly as possible before it's rained on, But at the same time, it's one of those things that drives me, is because the excitement of making that first discovery and learning what it is it a common chondrite, or is it something we've never seen before? So, I mean, you're always dreaming of that next big discovery, discovering a new type of meteorite, discovering, something that's never been seen before. So yeah, that's one of the elements that keeps me going, is that Witness Falls are, whatever comes my way, I will recover. We appreciate them all. Yes?
If you have a witness fall, how do you determine the impact point? Do you triangulate from observers and your radar data?
Mm-hmm.
How do you...
Well, I'm with an organization called American Meteor Society. That's the first step, is basically a public outreach platform on the internet. When you see a fireball, if you Google, I saw a fireball, what do I do? You're going to be directed to American Meteor Society. So you go in, you plug in your, basically there's an app on there where you can it'll walk you through logging in the fireball, and it basically does the report for you. But it assimilates the data into a three-dimensional map where we can actually see the ground path, estimated ground path of the fireball. The next step is looking at the radar data if it's in North America. If it's overseas, we have to kind of do it the old-fashioned way, and there's a lot of field research. You talk to the locals, triangulation, listen to sonic booms, and a lot of footwork. But if it's here in North America, we have the ability to track the meteorites falling on Doppler radar. It's NEXRAD, basically weather radar. So it's an invaluable tool that we use, and I think I just recovered my, I believe, 32nd witness fall this year was Stardust Mine. But I think I've recovered 9 now in North America using Doppler radar. And my record was, I can't pronounce it, Dishibashka blew up on the Apache Reservation. I just call it Sibiq. And we saw a fireball. Old childhood friend of mine called me at 4 o'clock in the morning and said he saw a nuclear explosion on the horizon. And, so I was on, but he was up, and AMS back then was manually loaded. So I was on there plugging in reports manually and got a basic idea. I knew it was up by the globe area. And I started looking at, a colleague of mine at NASA was teaching me how to analyze Doppler radar. I got on there and I looked, and I could see a pixel, and then like a myriad of pixels. And I told Ann, I think I just found my first meteorite fall on Doppler radar. So by then my colleague was awake. I sent it to him. He said, "Congratulations, you found your first meteorite fall on Doppler radar." Drove up there, and 14 hours later I was holding a meteorite in my hand. I think to this day it's still the record for purposeful witness fall recovery. So we've gotten it down to a science. So I actually have, in the last few years, been working with National Astronaut Administration, refining our abilities with Doppler radar. We're actually looking at integrating new technologies, including an optical component. So basically we want to create a nationwide network that have enhanced NEXRAD capabilities to where there is an event, whether it's space debris, meteorites, whatever comes our way, we're able to triangulate and rapidly recover these materials. So basically refining it into an absolute science to where we can track objects from the time they enter the atmosphere, or even past that if we know they're coming, all the way to the ground. So a lot of advancements in the past years I'm very excited about, and it's just amazing to work with folks from NASA and NOAA and other agencies and refining this capability. So it's amazing to be able to walk out into a farmer's field and find a piece of space debris in less than 30 minutes, and that's where we're at now. Yes?
When you say a meteorite comes from Mars,
Mm-hmm. We have laboratories on Mars. So like a lot of the programs from University of Arizona, the analytical equipment is actually placed on the lander. The Phoenix mission, right? Dolores had a lot of mobile equipment on the lander itself, where we're actually able to analyze Martian atmosphere. You've seen the rat on the Spirit and Opportunity that analyzes the sample. So we're actually able to look geologically where a particular type of meteorite comes from on Mars or even the moon. We have like Gadamus 00, what is it, the one, the Apollo 14 Mars, lunar meteorite, or anyways, they know that one particular meteorite, there's quite a bit of it available to the collector community. It was from a location on the moon that was very close to one of the Apollo missions landing sites where samples were returned from. But we have the same ability on Mars, but it's with remote laboratories that we've actually landed on the surface of Mars. Anything else?
What do you specifically look like for all the rock samples? You said you want to find one from the moon. What do you, visually, how do you do that?
Well, essentially, my first step is scouting out ground that is devoid of things that look like meteorites. So you don't want to go out in an area like the mountain up here that has the T on the side of it, right? And start looking for meteorites, because everything looks like a meteorite. So you want to find an area that's devoid of black rocks, devoid of pebbles with desert varnish. You want to find a type of terrain that's basically, that's why we picked Oman. You know, it's just basically a limestone plateau that goes on for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And you get out there and hunt. So you're looking for something that stands out. Most of the time it's color, a lot of times it's shape, it's size, if the size doesn't fit in. And you just train your eye to catch something that stands out. And then, you know, learning about meteorites, the show is a great place to start. Going around talking to dealers. A lot of the dealers love to take time to teach people about meteorites and what to look for. And you're able to actually see the samples in the case and handle them and learn about the features of meteorites that you need to look for in the field. So buy a loop, buy a powerful magnet, and you know, get out there and look for something that stands out. And you know, a lot of resources available online, and you know, you're looking for some, you know, obviously the thumbprints, your fusion crust, if a magnet sticks to it. Of course, the rarest meteorites, Moon and Mars, a magnet doesn't stick to. So you have a lot of elements to learn, but you know, they stand out. They're different than terrestrial rocks.
You had mentioned something about the hole in the meteorite. What's the significance of the hole?
Basically, it's just aesthetic. So a lot of times, the most important is a burn hole. So if you have a particular shape, and as it's ablating through the atmosphere, you know, it burns a hole through the meteorite, which is rare. Sometimes it's weathering holes. I actually have a Mundrabilia meteorite in the case out here. It looks like a brain coral. So it's just in that big case right in front. If you look at that, there's several holes that go all the way through the meteorite. So basically, it's just cool. Humans like odd aesthetic shapes, and to have a hole in the meteorite is just, it's an aesthetic thing, but it certainly increases the value of the meteorite, like the one my wife found. Had the hole all the way through it. I was talking to a number of collectors, and I think it's the only meteorite from that I've heard of from that location that had a hole all the way through the center of it. So I was very happy that she had found such an aesthetic piece unknowingly. It just had a big rock stuck in the hole. We just thought it was another iron from that location, but it turned out to be a really amazing aesthetic piece. So it's just an aesthetic thing. They're just, you know, like the Tucson ring, great example, perfect example, the best example of a hole in the meteorite adding to the aesthetic appeal of it is the meteorite that's, you know, the most famous rock in Arizona. One of the most famous in the world is the Tucson ring that was used as an anvil just a few miles from here. And they actually put it in the ground, and Jose Pacheco had another one, and they used them as anvils, blacksmith anvils from the late 1600s all the way up until the U.S. Army took over the village of Tucson, and it was shipped to the Smithsonian. But now it's on display at the Smithsonian, and it's one of the most famous and aesthetic meteorites in the world. So perfect example, great question. Yeah, a little bit, but it's just so tough. You know, by the time I knew enough to track that one down, it was before our radars, radars were archived, and, you know, but I have dabbled out there, and, you know, come think about it, it would be a great place to look for a moon rock. So, and I go out there. Mm-hmm. We're right on their toes, if not. Yeah, as far as major collection pieces, yeah, we're right there now. We've had a great year, just personal acquisitions, and some recent acquisitions. So when you go out in the case, the specimen closest to you, we've dubbed that the dragon scale. I've talked to a number. I haven't got Phil's input on it yet, but everybody I've talked to is like that is the most aesthetic-oriented meteorite we've seen, and it's an achondrite, and it stabilized. It was coming through the atmosphere, and just the crystalline makeup of the meteorite and the way it ablated as it came in, it looks almost like small reptile eyes, like hundreds of them across that surface. And then there's like little rivers of dark green flow with tiny little bubbles around each one. And then it transitions into this, what we call a rollover lip. And it looks like acrylic fingernails, like 100 of them stacked along the edge. And the backside's like multi-millimeter puddles like of melt glass that accumulated on the back and the backside of the meteor as it was coming through. It just puddled there and created this extreme, thickest fusion crust I've ever seen on a meteorite. And it's just like the most aesthetic meteor. It didn't even look real. When I first took it out of the box, I got it from Northwest Africa. I was telling a colleague, I like stared at it for like 5 minutes. Like, is this even a meteorite? He's like, I didn't understand what you meant until you sent me the sample. He's like, I had to look at it. It's like, it's too good to be true. So that's like the apex type specimen that every collector's dreams of getting. But that was our best acquisition this year. So it's on display with our best personal finds, or I say this year, 2024, with our best personal finds from 2024. So it was the best year ever. So we had a lot of incredible record-breaking finds and acquisitions. So that one, take a good look at that one, because that's a world-class specimen. Anybody else? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, well, we have researchers and collectors from all over the world that come and visit. We had one researcher recently from Poland, a Polish astronomy team, and less than a week later, I got a call in the middle of the night, an asteroid's going to hit Earth in like 23 minutes or whatever. And so we were watching, waiting for that to happen. Reports started coming in, and then one of my other colleagues sent out, he goes, you know that guy was in your rock room just a few days ago, right? He sent a picture. I'm standing there with my arm around the guy in the meteorite room just days before he discovered an asteroid before it hit Earth, which is a new, just amazing ability to see a rock coming and to know it's going to strike Earth any minute. I dream of that happening here, and Rick calling me in the middle of the night, get up, wake up, run out of it, because that would fulfill the career goal of seeing a fireball and recovering a meteorite from it. So fingers crossed. Any other questions? Come on, Brian. There's got to be something eating on your brain.
I want to know why every time I get a break, you get a bigger one.
Well, that's the way the rock bounces, Brian.
How many have you found?
Meteorites? Oh, as far as individual finds, I well over 6,000 and maybe over 7,000. After this summer, definitely over 7,000. But from probably, I'd say 600 different locations and 32 witness falls as of Stardust Mine. Actually, Indiana was 32. No, Indiana's 33 comes later. So I got 33 witnesses. It's been a whirlwind of a year.
I'm glad I was with you when I found my.
Yeah, that was a big one. You do know the kids beat you this year, Ryan, for their first meteorite finds. So, no, it's a lot of camaraderie in the community, and we're very lucky to have a lot of the best scientists and interesting folks from all walks of life that are part of the community. So it's a lot of fun and great to be able to make contributions to science. Anything else? Yes.
So, thanks, Brian, for bringing me out. This is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Never,
Pleasure to have you.
And of course, Brian, it's just kind of fascinating, and you can't get so I've seen that one many times.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, so I'm interested in
Mhm.
What's the best book or video, or what's the best way to really start learning?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of resources available on the internet today. If you want to go back to the basics, Find a Falling Star by Hadi Nininger was the book that kind of got the ball rolling for me. There's recently, I haven't read it yet, but the new revised version by Harvey's grandson. It's available at Aerolite Meteorites. You can read that book to kind of start at the foundation of meteoritics. And there's a lot of great material available. But I think basically, I could recommend a number of books, for they're in layman's terms. But internet resources, I think, are really the best way. There's a lot of great stuff on YouTube where you can, for meteorite identification. And just getting out here, Tucson Show is the mecca for meteorites worldwide. You have people from every corner of planet Earth here selling meteorites, and they're more than happy to walk you through it. So just boots on the ground, getting out here and learning from the folks here that are selling meteorites. That's the best way, in my opinion, because it's being able to hold it in your hand and to observe the density and the aesthetic features of the meteorite. It imprints better on your mind. You learn those patterns. So if you're out in the field, and also collecting. The more meteorites you see, the quicker you're going to be able to ascertain what type of meteorite it is, or if it's a good buy, or if it's the specimen you want. So Tucson's a great place, but yeah, the internet has a lot of resources. So Google meteorite identification or meteorite, aesthetic meteorite or meteorite collections, and yeah, just sit there and look at pictures because there's a lot of material available. Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. It's been a pleasure. And have a great show. If anybody wants cards, I think I have some of Ann and Smith cards here.
That was a great presentation by Robert Ward. It's surprising for a lot of people that it was just so fascinating, even though you may not have an interest in meteorite. Good job. I believe this is the book that he was referencing, The Falling Star by Harvey Nininger. Oh, Amazon. Actually, that right now. So again, great, great presentation by Robert Ward. He has a fine mineral gallery. I back that up today. But if you are in Tucson and you're at all interested in that is a thing that you're going to want to check out. Again, I'm not sure when he's backing it up, but it's there right now. That is the end of our morning presentation. Come on back here at about 2 o'clock Tucson time. That's about almost an hour and a half from now. And Violetta Wolf from the AE. I'm getting my museum. Violetta Wolf from the Alfie Norville Museum on the Arthur Ways. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be here 2 p.m. Until then, we will see you later. Take care. those of you who are still online, I just talked to Robert, and apparently meteorites are going to be on display here until Monday. So you have the entire weekend and tomorrow. So if you're in town, you want to see them, come on down. Other than that,